All right, and we should be live.
Awesome.
Ben, do you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Amazing. So yeah, thanks everyone so much for joining. Today we are joined by Michael Petr. He's the CEO and founder of Tracked Bio. This is kind of continuing our Gamifying longevity series. So yeah, I mean, I'm here with Michael in Manassas, Virginia. So Michael, maybe like let everyone know like where are we right now?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, we're in Northern Virginia. So it's nice to be here, and thank you guys for having me. And it's nice to meet you guys. So yeah, we're in Northern Virginia. We have a lab space here, and we started about a year ago. So yeah, so this lab space is gradually growing.
Amazing. Huge congrats on it, by the way. Saw it myself. The lab is legit. It exists. It's top secret, so we can't share too many pictures and videos, but I can assure you it's real. But yeah, I guess Michael, maybe like taking a step back for a second and giving everyone context on you, like, where did you grow up, and what initially got you into science?
Yeah, I grew up in Texas, in San Antonio, actually. So pretty south and pretty warm. And yeah, I got into science. I was always into like the application of it and medicine in particular. And I was also very interested in mathematics. So I wanted to find some way to combine them together. And I studied biomedical engineering and then went into aging biology after that. So that was sort of my trajectory until now.
Awesome. And why the jump? Like, why did you jump into longevity? Why did that attract you?
I think it was like I really liked how hands-on biomedical engineering was and making medical devices, but I also wanted some way to, help people on a broader scale. So, and just seeing that aging affects all of us, that was a very big inspiration. And also just seeing like, you have family and friends around you that are aging, that are older than you, aging themselves. So I think that was just made me very curious from an early point. So yeah, that was why. And I wanted to apply sort of an engineering mindset to aging biology.
Super cool. Like when you made that jump and you joined, I believe Morten Scheibenhutsen's lab in Copenhagen, like what were you studying there, and what was your work like, and also maybe what were some of the cool discoveries you made?
Yeah, right before Morten's, actually, I was working in Rafa de Cabo's. That was like my first introduction to aging research, was in his lab at NIH in Baltimore. And then I met Morten there and started my PhD with Morten in Denmark. And yeah, what I was doing, like studying for my PhD, was how can we see if a dietary intervention can help premature aging diseases, and as the basis being, can we modulate DNA repair with some external dietary treatment? So this is what I really studied and got into. I did a lot of model organism work, and so just doing that hands-on was like this takes a lot of time. So I wanted some way with with Tracked Bio now to speed that up.
So awesome. So like, I guess, how did you speed it up? Like, tell us, like what is the tech that you built while you were there, and yeah, like how does it work?
Yeah, so the company we have now, the Tracked Bio, is we developed a few systems. One of them being, as everyone knows, is the fly box, and so this is to allow like a scientist to put in their flies in the box, walk away, and it's processing and crunching data. And so this is also not having to use any external like apparatus to put the flies in. So you're just using the ones you're using in the lab already, and just removing that variable alone from taking them out and putting them into a separate tube is removing bias from having to handle the flies in that context. So really just a hands-off approach to analyzing lifespan and behavior. And this is the same philosophy we're applying to our mouse product, and also to our human product too. So
Awesome. Super cool. So I guess like if you had to approximate, like with your automation setup, how much are you reducing costs? Like how many people would it take? How many hours would it take to run these studies versus what you can just do with your tech?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now we're reducing the hands-on time. We've estimated 85% when we do our own internal comparison studies. And we're also validating this with the different groups now. But and normally, it ranges for the different organisms. But for flies, for example, it can take half of your week to just do handling and analysis. Half of a working week, like 20 hours. So, and with the system, we just put the flies in, and it's all you need to do is switch them out, change it with new food. So yeah, 85% reduction is our current metric that we've measured.
That's crazy. I guess like maybe speculating here, if you wanted to reduce the costs more, like how could you feasibly do it? Is that even possible?
Yeah, we're actually have some things in the works for that, but just the whole workflow.
Top secret.
To be continued. Yeah.
And Michael, is that efficiency? So I know you talked about flies. Is that seen across like all of your products? That 85%, both from flies to, I think you said you also have mice as well.
Yeah, it's the mouse. We're still testing actually. For the human pipeline, we can reduce the time by 6 compared to state of the art. So this is also something we're finishing up some validation studies on. So, still wrapping up the mouse one to say for certain.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we think about a lot, like at least in the kind of research that we've done around longevity, is we call it the trilemma, which is like these 3 super important variables when it comes to generating like data for longevity treatments that are like quality, cost, and speed. So how does Tracked Bio kind of fit in, and like what variables are it focusing on the most? Is it just that speed and quality, cost and quality? Like where can you guys move the needle?
Yeah, I think we're trying to hit all at once. Just how studies are normally done. There's a lot of, even like the same person doing the same experiment, there can be some differences in how they do the experiment. So, the standardized approach we think is sort of the path forward if you really want to scale up and test as many molecules as you possibly want. So, or genetic interventions or whatever you want to test. So that hits on the quality aspect, interperson quality, and the time, of course, like we discussed, and then the cost as well. We're trying to, I think they're equally important to make it all work.
Totally makes sense.
I was going to say, what would you say is the biggest thing that's holding breakthroughs in longevity back? Is it really the science and this trilemma that we talked about, or do you think it's something else?
I think it's definitely, from what we've seen, a large part is the trilemma. Also, I think just bringing in new ideas, which is happening now, like for interventions. I think that is another aspect, and it's already happening. You see like quite a few different disciplines at aging conferences, for example, which is awesome. But yeah, hope to see more. And also, just the sort of like publish or perish aspect of science can be rate limiting too. So I think there's a lot. It's a complex issue, as you guys know, and it's hopefully tools like these and other tools people are developing help speed that up and get past those barriers.
Yeah, I think you said something really interesting, bringing in new ideas. I guess thinking about Tracked Bio and the technology and this publish or perish problem, how do you see something like this accessibility to actually being able to do science and conduct research in a much more cost-efficient way? How do you see that playing a role in bringing in new ideas? And helping with the publish or perish problem?
Yeah, we hope it's very impactful.
Yeah.
I think it's a good question. I think if you can, within like the publish or perish realm, if you can reduce overall bias from occurring, or just any, on the ground doing science it's a lot of work, and someone's entire PhD can be studying one gene, one protein. So just to make all of that, make you assured it's going to go correctly, I think will be a huge advantage for the quality of science. So yeah,
also along those same lines, it's like if you can reduce the cost and the effort required to test one gene at a time, if it doesn't need to be your whole PhD, but you can do like screening of multiple genes or drugs at one time with something like a more efficient system like Tracked Bio, it reduces the burden to get it right with any one. And so you can discover more, and also you can publish more, right? Because your whole life isn't basically tied to this one gene, right? Or this one drug.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, I think there's also some beauty. I think it's a great point, and you can kind of diversify what you want to do during your study, like graduate studies or whenever you're studying anything. But I completely agree.
Multiple horses in the horsefly race.
Horseflies. Oh my gosh, I love it.
Bring in the
fly. So I guess I know you're more focused on the research operations side of things, but as much as you're exposed to like the larger field of longevity and all of these ideas, I think you put it perfectly, which is like the ideas are limiting, the quality of them, and then the funding and execution, like both independently are important. From the ideas perspective, it's like, whose ideas do you find yourself being drawn to from the literature, from conferences you go to? Like, whose work are you excited about? Maybe what areas of like longevity research excite you?
Yeah, I think maybe it's a bit biased as well, but studying DNA repair, I really liked just the idea that protecting your genome can be impactful, like from work like Jan Wieg or other pioneers in the DNA repair space. So I think and just how that's there's a cascading effect to some defect in your genome is a fascinating idea, and I really enjoyed looking into that while I was in Morton's lab in particular. So I think that's a cool area, and I hope to see more come from it.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really interesting to think about is like there's a lot of people who are in the research space, but like you said, they're so limited because of how the process is designed that they can only really go deep from like the publishing and the cost perspective, and looking at new ways to make things cheaper and faster and more accessible. You can hopefully unleash things that you think are interesting. It's not just like, oh, I niched myself in this space and I kind of have to stay here because now I'm so deep, where it's like you can actually go and look at things that you're interested in and have more, like accessibility to explore.
Yeah. And I think that really, it's a great point. Like it's in line with curiosity-based science. That's when the best discoveries really, they're really great discoveries. There's best discoveries across the board, but, when you're just curious and you just want to not worry about, this is going to take me a few months to complete this one experiment alone. It would be nice to just always test your idea when you want to. So I agree.
And on top of that, like also fitting into the publish or perish mindset is getting funding for whatever it is that funding body deems as promising, right? And like, who are they to judge? Like, of course, they consider them experts in the field, but in the same way that, what you just talked about, like the best experiments and results coming out of like scientists who are non-consensus, it's like we don't have a good system around funding non-consensus ideas, right? And so like, I think what you just said combined with being able to, just requiring to convince people to fund you for your non-consensus idea, that's actually where, maybe the best discoveries are going to be made.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, so I think it's a, a fascinating platform you guys have too, to see that come to life. So I think it'd be awesome to see that aspect of funding grow.
Totally. Yeah. Maybe let's jump into that. Jillian, did you have something you want to say around that?
No, I was just going to say too, I feel like all this is coming at an interesting time where I do feel like there's a lot more appetite from people to have ways to get back to that citizen science that you were talking about, where it's like for so long, just as there's walled gardens and like data and analytics and social media, like I almost feel like science is a bit of a walled garden too, where it's not accessible to people and you don't really get a say at all in what science gets done. And I do feel like there's a big appetite culturally to have a little bit more of citizen power and like creating substrate for people to explore their own interests, whether that be, I think we're seeing it some with the media right now. And I think science is very much like a part of that, where, health and wellness and outcomes, like people actually are really starting to titrate, what optimal supplements and things look like for them. So it's just kind of, I don't know, I feel like we're a part of maybe a more of a cultural groundswell, and this technology and this approach that your team's exploring is coming at, in my opinion, a right time, just with, like this more kind of people wanting to have more say in their data and science and media. So yeah, just for what that's worth.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, just, I guess also like as more ideas come from, just everyone that wants to, see some therapeutic go through or some idea going through a scientific pipeline, then, it's the more sample size we have for different ideas, the, hopefully the better outcome faster as well. So
definitely. Yeah. I do want to do a quick plug. I want to make sure too our audience knows if there's any questions based on the the conversation that we're having, feel free to drop them into the stream and we'll make sure to answer them. And if you want to, we're also open to inviting people onto the stream with us. So just want you to know we see your comments and want to make sure that if you have comments or questions that we get those answered. I do want to show this one, Chef's Kiss, based on curiosity-based science, like you said. Michael, definitely getting back to curiosity-based, right? And to me, it's like almost like skepticism, where you are just go through a line of questioning and you go where your curiosity wants to inform the science. So
absolutely, yeah. Glad to hear there's a good reception of that. Sure.
Yeah.
Totally.
Definitely.
I mean, it's curiosity-based, like ideas. Non-consensus based ideas, non-consensus based funding. I think Peter Thiel talks about this quite a bit. It's like, what are you most confident in that nobody else agrees you with? Like chances are that's going to be the heater in terms of like the best and like most likely to be game changing idea. So maybe like thinking about this maybe at a bigger, like longer time horizon, like let's say this takes off. Right. There's a ton of curiosity-based science going on. We're basically no longer shackled by, publish or perish. We're only shackled by the quality of the ideas that people can generate and AI's ability to like gather data that is predictive of what will help us live longer. Like what are your future predictions about the future of the longevity space? Like where do you want to see it go? How do you think it'll change?
I hope there's I guess we also all hope that some intervention is accessible. If you want an intervention to help you not age as fast, then I hope that's accessible to people. And I think that will come. There's a lot of interesting work happening right now, especially with like reprogramming and analytics, of course. Has always been an interesting topic for the past few years. And just to see more nanoparticles too. So there's a lot of interesting like different intervention categories like popping up into the aging space. So just to see also more categories come up, like, oh, I didn't realize this could be applicable here. So yeah, I think that's in line with the diversity of ideas too. Just seeing these different categories come into play too. So yeah, accessibility and different categories of interventions would be interesting to see as well.
I feel like this is, I don't want to say the elephant in the room, but like aging is not seen as a disease by the FDA. So would just be curious how there's so much cool science happening in longevity, but obviously then there's kind of the part of like, the FDA side of things. What are your thoughts on that? Like, should it be, would it help it if it was, or would it hold it back? Because I kind of go back and forth a little bit. Like maybe it's a good thing that it's not, but would just be curious, even you, Benji, what your take is on that.
You wanna? I can go. I think I also have the same sort of thought experiment. You do like go back and forth, and I still lean on that it would be more beneficial because it's kind of like if you treat all of the different diseases individually, you will have a marginal potential life and health span increase. Whereas potentially, if you treat aging, the processes of aging, you will hopefully have, at least some people estimate more lifespan and health span increase. So I kind of lean on it, like aging being a treatable, I don't know if calling it a disease, but treatable. So it would be nice to see.
100%. I totally subscribe to that thinking. I think the idea of playing whack-a-mole is certainly interesting from a short-term capitalist perspective. And I'm certainly like a capitalist at heart, but at the same time, if you really like, Goldman Sachs wrote this article a few years back called "Curing Diseases is not a like appropriate business model," basically saying that like if you create cures, like if you created a cure for aging, it actually wouldn't be great for business, right? So this is kind of like this conflicting nature of, what do we want to accomplish as a species in terms of health, and what is the most profitable, and understanding that, those aren't always aligned, right? And so I think being able to innovate at the financial layer, like we're trying to, is going to be super important, just to make sure that incentives are aligned between what we really want and what is economically incentivized, right? So I think we all agree here, right?
Yeah.
Treating diseases individually is not the way to kick out lifespan a lot. Like if you cured cancer, you would really only get 2 to 3 years in average life expectancy for the average person. If you treat the underlying causes of aging, you could potentially shift it out decades. Like why is that not what we're focusing on? But yeah, I mean, to your point, Jillian, it's not considered a disease by the FDA. You can't get a drug approved for lifespan extension. But at the same time, like that is only within the bounds of the current funding system and insurance system. If we can create our own parallel system that has its own funding layer, its own regulatory decision-making, maybe we can consider it a disease in our own new system and develop compounds for our own purposes. I think of these like kind of 3 components of like the public sector, the private sector, and then individuals. And I think for too long, there's been too much power among the private and public sectors. And I think it's also important to acknowledge like they've kind of failed us in developing these life extending compounds, supplements, products, et cetera. So it is kind of on the individuals to take some of that power back and try and develop it for their own purposes, where it doesn't serve the public and private sector. So I'm actually very curious to see, what RFK does with the FDA. I think that will be something super interesting to follow with the whole like Make America Healthy Again campaign, and see if maybe this changes. I think that's optimistic though. But yeah, we have to do our part. And I think that this is what we're working on here is like the seeds of potentially a whole new system for developing products for longevity. So yeah, sorry for the rambling, but hope that answers the question.
No, I think it's so good. And, to me, it all starts with like conversation. So shining a light on this stuff, I do think is important. And, for me, I think a lot of people think longevity is only for billionaires, like for the people who have the money to really dial into their health and really, get all of these biometric data points on themselves, and then, go to incredible lengths to optimize longevity. And I don't know, I think how we're talking about longevity, and I know we'll get into, how we're working together a bit, but like, to me, making it more accessible to people starts with like the research and letting people into that research. You obviously can't do the research if it's expensive. So having people like Tracked Bio, Michael, the work that you're doing, is like also bringing it down an accessibility layer, which I think for a long time has been something that didn't exist. So for me, I think even the optics around like longevity, it almost was like really boutique for a very long time. And it's actually making it a lot more for everyone. Like longevity should be for everyone too. Just like we've kind of had some of these comments about the FDA picking, what's important. Well, longevity should be accessible to everyone. We all should have the right to be here for a really long time. But yeah, I think that exactly what you're talking about, Benji, is, why we're all here for sure. I guess, in terms of, we talked about what building a new system. So would be curious to hear how crypto can play a role in fast tracking the development of longevity, how we think about that. Michael, would love to hear your thoughts on this piece.
Yeah. I think it's, of course it's very in line with what we're all doing here. And just to, I think our platform being video based, we try, and there's a lot of things you can see visually just by even looking. But from our computer standpoint, you can extract a lot more as well. And so I think just the visual aspect of that and tying that into hoping that this compound that you're betting on will extend lifespan or health span in the organism you're looking at. I think, yeah, like you're saying, the accessibility is more there because we can actually physically see it. So I think we hope to try different approaches too with crypto going forward, and we love working with you guys on this project. So. Yeah, I think the visual aspect really helps people see what's actually happening. Whereas, there's a lot of wonderful ways to measure aging at the molecular level, which is a lot of fantastic clocks that have been developed based on blood or different samples you can take. But I think just being able to physically see something could enable the crypto aspect of it. So I hope that makes sense.
I don't know, Benji might have coined something too, the horsefly. I think there's something to that too.
Yeah. The races
100%. And this is where the gamification component becomes super valuable is, if you can make it entertaining, think about how much more funding can come into it, because we've never thought about science as like an entertainment layer, right? It's always been this, necessary means to create products. But what if the product was the science itself? Science is so cool. Like, it's one of the coolest things that we do as a species. Like, shouldn't it be entertaining? And I think for too long, it's just been done behind closed doors for the sake of IP, because of the constraints of the IP system. And so if you can imagine removing those constraints, okay, let's jump in. So speaking of races, how can we make the different longevity experiments more entertaining? I think we talked about what we could do with mice, how we could create, cool games or moments around this. I guess, Michael, totally brainstorming here, what could we do to make longevity experiments more fun?
From this experiment's context, or in general, or
just in general? I mean, we're willing to try anything.
I think I think like we were saying before, even just seeing along the lines of let the races begin. I mean, you can see how if you're doing a mouse experiment, you can see how fast they're running. Like they love to run the wheel as well, so you can also see how often that's happening. If we're just doing the flies, they make different distributions of patterns, so maybe even predicting the pattern of their of like if there's multiple in a vial, just the pattern of their distribution, like predicting that aspect maybe might be cool. But yeah, hope to hear a lot of cool ideas from the community as well. But I think that might be a start, just seeing the social dynamics of in the model organism space might be kind of interesting to look at. There's a lot of, I think that's becoming more of an interest, social behavior and aging. So, and that's something we can all relate to. So I think it could be fun.
Okay, so I feel like what I'm hearing is like there's longevity, and then there's also other data points too that you guys have the ability to capture that people could potentially speculate around as well, that may play into longevity, but also may not. Could be, like you said, having a mouse run faster. There's probably, more like performance-based stuff that we could look at as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And we can see all of this, and just yeah. However, if if people want to see a certain experiment be done, and we can attach one of our cameras and then apply it to that setting. So we're open to ideas as well.
Cool. Let's see if we can get them to like deadlift.
That's a whole new kind of pump.
Deadlift.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
Exactly.
in itself is a discovery. Just getting the mouse to that's amazing in itself.
Yeah. One of the ideas we got from a group that we work with is maze tests. And so like basically, I don't know exactly how maze tests works. Maybe Michael, you can explain to everyone how maze tests work, but I think we're into nootropics. So like what are chemicals that also can help you like think better? And so how could you potentially test something like that on a mouse?
Yeah, like there's different mazes for different applications. So like there's like a Y maze, for example, literally a Y, and the mouse can sit in there, and then you can see how many times they remember the past arm they were in. So you can get a sense of memory, for example. There's another one would be not a maze, but open field box. So you can test like anxiety levels of the mouse this way, because if they're more in the center of the box, they're less anxious. This kind of simulates an open field, like a mouse being in an open field. They're less likely to be in the openness of it because they don't want to get picked up by a bird, or so this is kind of what that test is looking at as well. So yeah, like in the concept of like nootropics, you could see cognitively how well the mouse is doing these mazes. So
super
are these
cool
research kind of methodologies, like when people are doing anxiety medications, or starting with, I know there's obviously a dire need for Alzheimer's treatments, but are these different types of tests that you're talking about? Do people do them for current therapeutics today? Like, is that where some of that starts as a leading indicator to then move things into humans?
Absolutely, yeah. This is a few people now doing them actually on their different aging therapeutics. So yeah, it's definitely these are like the go-to assessments people are looking at. So they're accessible, first of all, and yeah, and using a camera you can use different software to analyze and everything too. So that's also we're integrating our systems into these as well.
Okay, I think that's so cool that it's not only like entertaining, but it's actually, like you said, scientifically rigorous in the way that people are using it today. You know what I mean? So it's not just, we're not talking about entertainment just for the sake of entertainment. It's feeding real science.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, what are some other tests we can do? Like, I'm familiar with the hanging test. What are other like very common
Wait,
mouse
what is
tests?
the hanging test? What is
Yeah,
the hanging test?
there's different.
Go for it,
Yeah,
Michael.
there's different ones. Like they look at muscle strength mostly, and dexterity a bit. And so like the mouse will hang from a wire, and it sounds kind of bad. So they'll hang from a wire, and then you'll see how long it takes them to fall onto like a soft cushion. And so basically like it's an indirect readout of if they're stronger, then they're gonna hang on longer. So that's the idea with that one. There's also like different assessments are. I did a lot of gait analysis, like walking analysis with mice. That's becoming published a few papers on that, and becoming a bit more used as well. Walking itself is predictive of mortality, actually. So walking speed. So this is quite a strong test too. Yeah, grip strength is another one. So like seeing there's like a meter you can put a mouse, and they hold on to it, and you see how strongly what the meter reads out as their force they're pulling. So these are some of the common measurements people use now.
Yeah, I'm
This might be
literally envisioning the mouse Olympics, where we
Olympics.
test them on everything. We test their anxiety levels, we test their brain, do they
Yeah.
like, how is their memory affected? Like, how long can they hang for? And then just have like a whole prediction market around everything. Like, that sounds so fun. And then people just submit different, basically performance enhancing drugs to see like what helps the mice on each event. It honestly sounds so fun.
Yeah, I thought back to how I was describing it, and I can just imagine you like forming this Mouse Olympics idea in your head.
Yeah.
First it was horseflies, now Mouse Olympics.
Yeah.
Michael, is it, I guess just for understanding to the process of that, like it sounds like one mouse be a part of multiple tests, or like how does that work on your side? Is it you limit them to only a certain type of test, like maybe one does hanging, one does endurance, or do you triangulate a lot of different tests with one mouse?
Yeah, normally, yeah, it kind of depends on the study, but normally try and do it with the same mouse across. The ideal situation is you the same mouse across all these tests, but it's you have limited time, and it's stressful for the mouse to do all this, and you don't want to impact the mouse and the results. So depending on the size of the study, you'll have to split it up into different cohorts. And so, yeah, we're also with our mouse system. Our main one is a in-cage one, so you don't have to, move it to different tests. We're trying to make it all in one system too. So, but of course, there are different systems can measure different things, so it's ideal to also get as much information you can from these different systems. But yeah, you can sometimes need to split it up, but sometimes it's possible to do it the same mouse across these different assessments.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm just wondering if we can run the mouse decathlon. Now that I'm thinking about it, we need to run the mouse decathlon for sure. And maybe we do it over 10 days to not stress out the mouse too much. But
yeah,
would be so fun.
It's a new era for the mouse.
Yeah. But I guess to Jillian's question, this is something that we're super curious about, because like mice are expensive, right? And they take a while to like grow up. And I know that, from like a scientific rigor perspective, you only want to test like one drug per mouse. But is there a world in which we could take one mouse and, test 10 different drugs on them just in sequence? Like, is that feasible? I think that would certainly like accelerate things on our side.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's an interesting question, but not something we've tried. But it would be interesting to see. I guess also if you're testing different drugs, depending how long you do it, you'll have a different age category each time. But it would be interesting to see. I think also if you can reduce the number of tests and have a higher readouts, that might also speed up the time, because each test can also take half an hour to an hour per mouse too. So yeah, like I think playing with those different variables, the number of compounds or interventions, and the number of measurements would be interesting.
I was just reflecting too on your comment, your publish or perish comment, and I feel like you can see really quickly how there could be so much data that could be generated. Obviously, we certainly want to not overdo the mouse. Like there's a degree of like within reason right there. But yeah, I guess for me too, it's just like an eye opener on how by creating a more efficient system and by, aligning the crypto side of things, you're bringing incentives together. And actually the output is a lot of data that may lead to, maybe more publications or more analysis, but it really is for good, because right now I think we're having a hard time with giving people the opportunity to have more data to publish because it's so hard to get funding and whatnot. And something like this, all of a sudden it's like you can add in different layers of testing and generate a lot more data that then, hopefully someone would want to dig in and do an analysis around, right? That could lead to more publications. But yeah,
Absolutely.
just I don't know, it's a lot more exponential than I realized.
If you can extract more information at a higher time resolution, I think as well, you can publish faster, get, and not just publish, but also get an idea of if something works faster. So absolutely.
But it also, I think, in a super interesting way, if you're like in a biotech company and you want to run mouse assays, right? You start to think about, well, with each new assay, it's going to get more expensive, and like, it incentivizes collecting less data. But if you can create entertainment around each assay, right? Now you have an incentive to run more, right? So now you actually want to generate as much data on that mouse as possible, right? That so long as it's entertaining and so long as you can make it fun. But assuming you can, then like now you have reason to run everything, right? To get as much, to not stress the mouse out too much, but put them to work.
Maybe we'll.
But yeah, I guess, Michael, one thing that the whole community is wondering is when flies, like where are the flies that we're working with? Where are they in their life cycle, and when can we expect the experiments to begin?
Yeah, we are growing them now, and our aim is to do it next week. So you also saw them too, and they're in a happily growing state. So we're excited to start next week. So looking forward to that.
Awesome, super cool. And what can people expect throughout like the process? Like they hatch, the data starts getting streamed. What happens then?
Then you'll start to see, they're very, very active in the beginning, but, hopefully with the different compounds, I mean, they're going to definitely decline with age overall. Hopefully you see some improvement in motor function, for example, and lifespan with the different compounds. So hope to see some interesting effects in the different vials of flies. You can even just looking at the videos, I think everyone will just pick up different patterns just by looking at them. So hope to see, curious to see what people think, and looking forward to the comments on it too.
And if you were a betting man, what do you think? So I know we're streaming like a few pieces of data to users. So one is like the counts, like how many flies are still alive. That's all AI driven. You also have some other AI driven phenotypes as well that are going to be streamed. Do you want to talk about what those are, and if you were a bettor, in this market, how you would use them?
Yeah, I guess that's the secret sauce for I think we're we're sending distance traveled and also how fast they're moving per time point. So, if you think back to the comments I made before, maybe you can extract which one might be useful. I mean, they're all actually very useful. I mean, speed is a very strong predictor of lifespan, and also distance. And they're all very strong predictors. And I guess the top one is just simply how many are alive too. So I think I would compare all of them and see.
Gotcha.
How
Cool.
they're all.
So what you're basically saying is like the farther they go, the faster they go, the more likely they are to live longer is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, I would I'll look at it this way.
Okay, cool. I guess like in the future, I know you mentioned like patterns that the flies walk in, and you kind of alluded to like social interactions, but like, are there any cool features that you think that we should think about including in the future? And what should people know about?
Yeah, we also we're developing some nice social measurements right now. So hopefully, for the next iteration, we can include them. And circadian, I mean circadian rhythm. So like how there's differences throughout the entire day. So the flies can be different at 4 o'clock versus 10 o'clock. So I would look at this as well. If you see there'll be changes there's definitely changes with age and circadian rhythm. You see a suppression of the actual rhythm itself. And I would compare how compound is affecting that as well.
Awesome. Super cool.
I was going to say, Michael, talking about circadian rhythm, obviously that's something that we as people have. Yeah. How similar are the systems, right, that these flies have to systems that are in people? Or people might be asking, like, why flies? Is that really going to tell us that much information about what would happen in a human?
Yeah.
So I would just even be curious to hear the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think flies are this organism type called crepuscular. So they actually are more active at dawn and dusk. So there is a difference, but also there is, we have our own patterns as people. We're generally more, I mean, for the most part, many people are most active in the daytime. But I think just having the pattern alone is very interesting. So that is some conservation. And I think in general, but in general, there are other similarities. I mean, the fly and humans, they have 60% shared disease-causing genes. So you can study most diseases in a fly, and the phenotypes are quite strong. Even in my PhD, we looked at premature aging fly, and there's we compared it to different outcomes you see in people, and there's a lot of overlap there. Of course, not the same, but it's very you can still learn a lot. So, yeah, I think and there's the flies have different organ systems too. They have a nervous system, a gut, a fat body, it's called a fat body, muscle. So there's, you can look at the whole physiology of the fly as well, and compare that.
So what you're saying is we should give the flies Ozempic?
They're going to get rid of the fat body.
It won't have a fat body anymore.
Yeah,
would be interesting.
I hope that's cool. So I guess what are the main differences in anatomical systems worth noting between us and flies?
Yeah, there's a different makeup of the blood. It's called a hemolymph in flies, not the exact same. And of course, they're invertebrates. So spineless, and yeah, the most of their muscle function actually is in the wing. So like it's not like they're getting strong biceps with the new compound. So I guess there's like some major differences off the top of my head too, and of course they're insects as well. So
Checks out.
Yeah, I think also the food, they have generally high protein foods. I mean, a lot of their different diets do. So some of us do as well. So, but not everyone. So yeah, I think there's just some interesting differences in the fly environment and physiological system in people.
Makes sense. What are the flies eating? What are we feeding them?
Yeah, we feed them. It's an agar based food, almost like a gelatin, like a jello, and you have like they actually eating brewer's yeast, so something you would make beer with, and also there's sugar and cornstarch. Yeah, so this is really the makeup of, and a lot of sugar. So they're sometimes called banana fly or different names. So they love sugar and vinegar too, or vinegar flies. So they're not eating vinegar here, but yeah, they like these things. Yeah.
Is diet modification ever a variable that's studied? I mean, obviously, I think about things like there's data on people fasting and the impact that can have on, different outcomes. Is diet a factor that can also be experimented with as well? Obviously, we're giving them compounds, but was just curious, even within when they're fed, how they're fed.
Yeah, there are people looking at this too. Even there's like, just they change the composition of like the ratio of these different ingredients, or there's even dietary, like caloric restriction flies, dietary restriction flies. So yeah, people are looking at this, and it does impact lifespan and health span quite a lot, actually. There's some overlap with the effects as well in people. So, and also mixed effects. I mean, some people will dietary restrict the flies, and it's not a good outcome, and sometimes it is. So, as always, there's so not a consensus there. Back to the consensus point.
Cool. So, I guess like maybe along the same lines of like creating entertainment research with the flies. Like, I mean, we had the idea of the mouse decathlon, but like, what are some other kind of functional tests we can give the flies?
Yeah, there's one I think would be pretty fun. Actually, it's called a geotaxy test, and so it's like basically it's very simple. You tap the vial, all the flies go to the floor, and they have this natural response to crawl to the top of the vial, and you just see how fast they do that. So that might be of interest to everyone.
Yeah, we should do that one. That sounds fun.
They're just like stunned, and then they like, okay, I got to crawl up. So,
and can they fly? Can the flies fly?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are some wingless flies people use sometimes. They fly. They like your viewers will probably see as well. Like even in the vial, most of the time they're walking, but they'll just kind of do quick like jumps around sometimes. So maybe that's a betting point as well. Actually, how often they jump.
Super cool.
Super interesting. Well, I know we have a few minutes left. I just going to make a plug. Don't want to interrupt the conversation, but want to make a plug for any questions. So feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll make sure to pull them up and get to them as we have the last few minutes here left. But I guess, Michael, one thing that I always think about when we have these conversations around longevity is there's kind of like what we're hoping for in the future and then what people can do today. And would just love if there's, as you think about like, okay, advice for anybody today in terms of things they can do to start to impact aging and longevity. What is one thing from your knowledge that you would say everyone should do or think about as it relates to longevity?
You just have to do it. You have to, I think, yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, I think like, I think you should, do something you're really interested in something and you're like, how does this relate to aging? But I think you should still try and apply it somehow into aging, so whether it's just social aspects of life you're studying or engineering or even an artistic art, and just integrate it, I think, somehow in aging if you want to be involved in the growth of it, because all of it is impactful. So follow what you're passionate about, I think. And if you want to see that integrated somehow into the aging space, I think you should go for it. That's my opinion.
Definitely. It also kind of stirred up for me, like when you said follow what you're interested in. What I think is super cool to think about is like, I get served so many things on social media about different supplements and things that I feel like people are, trying to influence me to take. And it would be so cool to do like a head to head or something if there was like as we think about these different types of data points that we can get from different type of experiments, I think it would be cool too to think about, like, even if you're not a researcher or not an expert, like there is ways that you as a person can get involved too. So just following your curiosities, and then obviously like with something like what we're working on, giving people a way to truth seek, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did have a question come up. Benji, I think also probably for both. Benji, what's happening on the 15th, and then what that looks like from an experiment science side.
Cool. So yeah, on the 15th is the day that we had planned on the flies hatching. So from the sounds of it, it sounds like the flies may hatch a bit early. So we're going to have to figure out how to handle that. Been talking to Michael about this. What we may do is, because, we have the whole community kind of focused on that date, we may start streaming the data a bit early, but just still announce it on the 15th. But yeah, by the 15th, like for sure, there will be data being streamed to the site. The tokens are already live, so those can already be traded. But really, it's around the experience of observing the flies, getting the data. But every 4 hours, I believe, there's a new stream, like a video stream of the flies that is posted to the website. And then once per day, Michael and his team have built AI models that predict how many of the flies have died. And I think we talked about speed and distance. So how fast they move and how far they've traveled. And so that kind of like process data will be posted once a day. So the idea basically being, if you can watch the stream and you can start to predict yourself visually before the AI models, then maybe you can have like alpha in the system and basically be able to come to conclusions before the AI systems kind of give you the answers. So yeah, that's kind of what they can expect. Michael, anything to add?
I think that's all there. Yeah. So like you said, it could be a bit earlier too. So we're ahead of schedule. So hope everyone enjoys.
It's certainly an art and a science. It seems like planning the kickoff of these experiments.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, and I also wanted to mention too, I mean, if just by looking at the progression of the experiment, if anyone wants to see any new measurements in the future, we'd love to hear the feedback on that. So yeah, just want to make it accessible like that.
Yeah, I'm leaving this conversation with a ton of ideas. So I think it'll be cool to see what the community wants and how they want to see the direction of pump science go. We did have another question. Where do you see yourselves by 2030? I think there's probably a couple ways to answer that. Hopefully, maybe from a longevity perspective, and then also maybe from a science platform perspective as well.
I want to be the same biological age. That's for damn sure. But yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what would be cool for this system is for it to look like kind of Formula One, where, you have teams, and those teams are basically developing different cocktails of drugs that you can give to model organisms that just help them, like, performance enhance. And so they can go faster, travel farther, live longer. And we've got the whole world caring about this, speculating on it. And then people can take, a bunch of these products themselves too. And they impact people as much as they do the animals in a positive way. And so, basically, like, this becomes the entry point to all these supplements that we buy online and take every day, that, help not only make us better today, but, help us live longer in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think for me that, like, personally, I would love to, like, also be the same biological age. And I guess in that, like, in line with that, just as being able to be as fit and functional as I am now, or, just able to be mobile as much as possible. So I think that would be really nice. And from the platform perspective, I think it's an interesting synergy between our platforms. Just in the future, maybe someone can just more easily request something to be tested, and it's pretty automatic how the result comes out. So kind of vague, but hopefully to see that system evolve even more.
Yeah, I think it would be cool to kind of all the ideas that were thrown around. I almost picture when I was watching the Olympics, I would log into watch it on like a smart TV as opposed to like live TV, and to be able to pick like swimming, track and field, gymnastics. Like I almost see it being like, how cool would it be if there was a platform that was streaming the science and people could go in and pick, what experiment, what science they're interested in, and be fed that data. So it would be like living forever, running faster, lifting more, but end game it'd be so cool by 2030 if there was like a streaming platform for science with each bucket of experiments. And yes, I too would also like to be the same biological age.
Glad we all agree. Hopefully not. Yeah, that'd be cool. Just to choose the outcome you want to see, like you're saying. That's a cool future to have. The future is bright. So
the future
let's make it happen. Let's make it happen.
Well, I know you guys are at the Fly Nest, so I know you got probably some important matters to get to set things up for next week. But Michael, thanks for taking the time and connecting with our community. I know there's a lot of people that are pumped to get these fly experiments kicked off. And, there was a lot of really good conversation about, I think we're talking about longevity now, but there's some really interesting data points that really could inform the future of the platform. So yeah, appreciate you both taking the time, and nothing left for me.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. So looking forward.
Yeah, same here. Good stuff.
More to come.
Thanks, everyone.
Round 2, 11/15.
Yep. See you November 15th, baby.
See you then.